In the last episode of Animated Bible Myths, Dinkleberry waterboarded the dinosaurs because humanity was worm-squirming with giants. Click here to check it out now. It's been a few years since the Great Flood, and Dinkleberry failed miserably at eliminating sin, specifically in two towns, Sodom and Gomorrah. And since the whole genocide of the sinful worked so well before, Dink plans to wipe out these entire towns too. He hears the sinful outcry, and sends a couple of angel dude cakes down to investigate. They plan to couch surf in the city center, but Lot urges them to crash at his place instead. Within a few hours, the entire town of Sodomites gathers outside Lot's house, because they hear that sex with angel men is absolutely out of this world. Now Lot wants to look out for his guests, and he knows that women are basically cattle anyways, so he offers his two virgin daughters for a public gang rape instead. But they were so butt ugly that the entire town didn't want to bone them. Lot's wizard guests cast flare, blind the Sodomites, and tell Lot to flee to the mountains. But since it's late and he's tired, Lot asks if he can go next door to the town of Zor instead, which they agree to. Lot tries to convince his daughter's fiancés to come along, but they think he's telling an apocalypse joke, which was apparently something everyone joked about right after the flood. But at least this was their way out of marrying Lot's ugly daughters. Lot, his wife, and 2 cows flee to Zor, and the next morning Dinkleberry rains down sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, sulfur's not all that flammable, but when heated releases sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide, which are pretty toxic byproducts. Basically, Dink engaged in chemical warfare long before World War I, and he definitely beat Saddam and Assad to it. He invented chemical warfare. What a creative guy. Lot's wife looks back to check out the view and is instantly turned to a block of salt. But Abraham, watching from his hilltop lawn chair, is okay. At least she turned into kosher salt. She made a fantastic seasoning for their lamb kebabs. Now, after offering his virgin daughters up for gang rape and leaving their fiancés behind to their deaths in Sodom, Lot decides that the town of Zor isn't the safest place to raise his daughters after all, because he's clearly concerned about their well-being. So he moves them to an isolated mountain cave. Being homeschooled was the last straw for them, so they get their dad schwasty-faced. And once he's lying there with his dick out for Harambe, they take turns sleeping with him and get preggo. We don't hear much about Lot and his daughters after this, but their inbred offspring were the fathers of the Moabites and Ammonites, who worshipped the cow-faced fire god Moloch and ripped open pregnant women's bellies. It sure is a good thing that Dink preserved their lineage. Now, this may seem just like a typical crazy animated Bible myth, but it's because of stories like this and others in the Bible that bigoted pastors bash gays and claim that modern-day catastrophes are a result of 2 men loving each other. They claim that sodomy causes floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. But that's some next-level magic right there. If that's the case, I'll butt-fiddle my way to Narnia and level up. You'd better hope your city's not on my dislike list, because I'm one gay relationship away from becoming a butt wizard weatherman capable of summoning down sulfur rain on your town. There's one more thing that stands out about this story. You know how before the internet, parents would come up with ridiculous explanations to answer their kids' questions when they didn't have the slightest clue what the answer was? Do parents still do that? You know, like the moon has a golden tint because it's made of cheese. People do bad things because Pandora opened a box. That kind of thing. Well, I remember hearing in Sunday school one time that the Dead Sea was salty because God turned Lot's wife into a giant block of salt that later dissolved into it. And while I know that that account isn't found anywhere in the Bible, it does kind of bridge the narrow gap between religion and superstitious mythology and old wives' tales, lumping them all together in one category. Because ultimately, that's all that religion is. An ignorant but easy answer to the complicated mysteries of the universe. Sure, it's easier to ignore hard science, to not do the research, and to just say that everything poofed out of nowhere at the behest of a magical galactic wizard. But rainbows don't exist because of God's flood regret. Snakes don't crawl on their belly because one of them was once a shady apple salesman. And we weren't created by a divine Jewish zombie for the sole purpose of satisfying his never-ending lust for compliments. How is this still a thing? We have telescopes and microscopes, spectrographs, and the internet. These explanations had their time as placeholders for the ignorant and their lack of understanding. But this is the 21st century. We shouldn't be basing our lives around cannibalizing the body of a divine human sacrifice or propagating myths about prophetic wondermen floating into space on a magical horse. A 1,000-headed monster didn't create our planet, and the earth wasn't spoken into existence in 6 days. There is one passage in the Bible that I love though, and it comes from the words of Paul. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. Religion limits the mind, offering simple explanations that may have seemed plausible when we were children. But it's time to grow the hell up. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to help support Holy Koolaid, please go to patreon.com/holykoolaid to become a patron of mine. Like this fine patron, Anthony Magnabosco. Anthony's a friend of mine and he's got a pretty cool channel that's all about street epistemology. Be sure to go check it out. And don't drink the Kool-Aid. Scribble my nibble.